Say the word neutral to someone who loves deeply and watch what happens to their face. Because neutral sounds like the opposite of everything they are. It sounds like suppression, like performance, like being asked to sand down the most genuine parts of themselves in order to win some psychological game with a person who should have been choosing them freely from the beginning. It sounds, in short, like self-betrayal dressed up as strategy. And if that is what emotional neutrality meant, I would tell you to ignore it completely. But that is not what it means. And the difference between what most people think neutrality is and what it actually is, psychologically, is the difference between a tactic that exhausts you and a state of being that genuinely changes the dynamic. Here is what emotional neutrality is not. It is not pretending you do not care. It is not performing indifference while privately falling apart. It is not the calculated withdrawal of warmth designed to trigger pursuit. It is not swallowing your feelings until they find other ways out. It is not becoming cold. It is not becoming unavailable. It is not turning yourself into a version of the avoidant in order to beat them at their own game. All of those things require enormous energy. All of them are fundamentally dishonest, and all of them, eventually, collapse. Because performance is not sustainable, and an avoidant, who is exquisitely attuned to emotional authenticity, feels the performance underneath the presentation and responds to it accordingly. Not with pursuit, with their own managed distance, because now there are two people in the dynamic who are not being real. Emotional neutrality, in the psychological sense that actually matters here, is something much simpler and considerably harder to achieve. It is the state of genuinely caring about the outcome without being destroyed by it. It is wanting the relationship without needing it in order to function. It is being warm and open and fully present without your emotional equilibrium depending on how they respond to that presence. It is having a stake in this, without that stake being so enormous that every shift in their behaviour sends you into either elation or collapse. That state is not manufactured, it is arrived at. And it is arrived at through one thing only: having a life and a sense of self that is genuinely full enough that this relationship, as much as it matters to you, is not the entire load-bearing structure of your emotional world. Now here is why that specific state makes avoidance chase, at a psychological level, in a way that no strategy replicates. The avoidance attachment system is calibrated to detect emotional demand, not because they are looking for it maliciously, because their nervous system was trained, early and repeatedly, to anticipate that closeness comes with weight, that intimacy comes with need, that the moment you let someone in, their emotional requirements become your emotional responsibility, and that responsibility is suffocating. So they enter every relationship already braced, already scanning, already monitoring beneath conscious awareness for the signs that the emotional temperature is rising to a level they cannot manage. When you are anxiously attached to the outcome of the relationship, that anxiety is detectable. It lives in the quality of your attention, in the slight shift in your energy when they go quiet, in the way your warmth increases when they pull back, trying to compensate, in the readiness with which you make yourself available the moment they show interest, in the specific texture of someone who is watching for signals and adjusting themselves in response. The avoidant feels all of it, and it confirms the thing their nervous system was bracing for, that being close to you comes with emotional weight they are going to have to manage. When you are genuinely emotionally neutral, when your sense of self is stable enough that their behaviour does not determine your internal state, something completely different registers. There is no ambient anxiety for their nervous system to detect. There is no monitoring energy, no quiet readiness for either rejection or validation. There is just a person who is warm and present and genuinely interested, whose equilibrium does not depend on the outcome of the next exchange. That specific absence, the absence of emotional demand, does not read as indifference to the avoidant. It reads as safety. Because for the first time, closeness with you does not come with the weight their system was trained to expect. Being near you does not activate the alarm, and when the alarm does not activate, the avoidant does something they almost never do voluntarily. They move closer. There is a second psychological mechanism at work here that runs slightly deeper. An avoidant who has always been the one to manage distance suddenly encounters someone who does not need to be managed. Someone whose emotional state is not contingent on the avoidant's behaviour. Someone who is equally at ease whether the avoidant is warm or distant, present or retreating, open or sealed. This produces a specific cognitive disruption. The avoidant's sense of control in a relationship is partly built on the implicit power of their own distance. The withdrawal is meaningful because it affects you. The warmth is powerful because you respond to it. The push and pull works as a regulatory mechanism precisely because one person is pushing and pulling and the other person is moving in response. When you are genuinely neutral, the push and pull loses its function. The distance does not produce the anticipated effect. The withdrawal does not generate the expected pursuit. And the avoidant, whose nervous system has been running this pattern on autopilot, suddenly finds themselves in unfamiliar relational territory. They are no longer the one with the most leverage. And leverage, even when it was never consciously claimed, is difficult to lose without noticing. What often follows is the avoidant reaching. Not because they calculated that reaching would be effective, because the absence of your anticipated response created a genuine pull toward you that they did not engineer and cannot entirely explain. Here is the part that requires the most honesty. Emotional neutrality is not a destination you arrive at and maintain permanently. It is a practice. There will be moments when the anxiety breaks through, when the uncertainty becomes too loud, when the gap between what you feel and what is being offered becomes too wide to sit with calmly. That is not failure. That is being human. The goal is not the elimination of feeling. The goal is the decoupling of your emotional stability from their behaviour. Those are different projects. One requires you to become less than you are. The other requires you to become more than the relationship. And becoming more than the relationship is the work, not the performance of it. The actual, gradual, sometimes deeply unglamorous work of building an interior life so solid and so genuinely yours that another person's unavailability cannot hollow it out. The avoidant chases the emotionally neutral person, not because neutrality is a game they lost, because neutrality, real neutrality, is the first environment in which their nervous system has ever felt free enough to actually want to close the distance themselves. You are not withholding from them. You are simply no longer making their emotional management your full-time occupation. And in the space created by that specific freedom, something in them that has always wanted to move toward you finally has room to do exactly that. Without being asked, without being chased, without the anxiety that was never yours to carry in the first place.